right, let's jump right into one of biology's biggest head scratchers. We're talking about plant viruses. These things exist in the strange little limbo. Sometimes they act like nothing more than a lifeless chemical, but other times they behave exactly like a living organism. So let's get into this bizarre identity crisis. So that brings us to the big question that's going to frame our whole discussion. Is a plant virus actually alive? Now, you'd think that'd be a simple yes or no, right? But trust me, the deeper you go, the weirder and more complicated the answer gets. And this is where things get really weird. This is the central paradox. In one corner, you have all the hallmarks of life. A virus has a genetic code. It makes copies of itself, and it evolves over time. But in the other corner, you have the total opposite. It has zero cells, it has no metabolism to make its own energy, and get this, it can be crystallized like a grain of salt. So what gives? To try and figure this out, let's start by making the case for life. What is it about these things that makes scientists even pause and think, you know what, maybe this thing is alive? Well, the whole argument really kicks off with their genetics. Viruses carry a blueprint, either RNA or DNA. And this isn't just some static file sitting there. No, this code is active. It changes, it mutates, it adapts. This allows a virus to jump to a new plant or figure out a way around a crop's natural defenses. And that ability to change over generations, that's one of the absolute bedrock definitions of life. And this isn't just theory, you know? We can actually see it happening out in the world. Take pottyviruses. They're a really common group of plant viruses. Scientists have literally watched them tweak the genes for their outer protective shell, their coat protein. And by doing that, they become able to infect totally new types of plants they couldn't touch before. I mean, that is evolution playing out in real time. And then you've got replication. Sure, a virus is completely helpless on its own, but the second it gets inside a host cell, it's like a master hijacker executing a flawless plan. It's not messy, it's a precision takeover. It seizes the cell's machinery, forces it to pump out viral parts, and then perfectly assembles thousands of new clones. It's a hostile takeover, for sure, but an incredibly organized one. I mean, that sounds pretty convincing for Team Alive, doesn't it? But hold on. Now we gotta flip the script and look at the powerful, powerful arguments for why a virus is really nothing more than an inert, non-living chemical. And the biggest piece of evidence, the real knockout punch for Team Not Alive, is that viruses are acellular. Just think about that for a second. Every single living thing we know of, from a tiny bacterium to a massive whale, is made of cells. It's the fundamental building block of life. And viruses? They just don't have them, period. Yeah, as one paper puts it so well, viruses are just assemblies of nucleic acid and protein, not independent metabolic units. Basically, they're just a little care package of genetic info wrapped in a protein box. That's it. There's no busy interior, no organelles, no engine running inside to keep them going. Here's another weird little quirk that sets them apart. Every living cell you can think of uses DNA for its main library of genetic info, and RNA as the messengers to carry out the instructions. But a virus, it has to choose. It gets either DNA or RNA, but never both in the same way. It's another fundamental difference from everything else we call life. This dependency becomes just painfully obvious when you put a virus and a living cell side by side. A cell is like a bustling, self-sufficient city. It creates its own power, it builds its own structures. A virus particle, on the other hand, is a rock. It has no metabolism. It can't generate a single spark of energy. It has to steal and borrow everything it needs from the cell it infects. But if you need the one piece of evidence that just completely breaks your brain, it's this. Scientists can take something like tobacco mosaic virus, purify it, and literally turn it into a crystal. A stable, inert crystal, just like a grain of sugar. It can sit on a lab shelf for years, and then, if you put it back in a host, it springs right back to life. Or, well, back to action. Nothing else we consider truly alive can do that. It's just wild. So, okay, you've got this huge philosophical debate raging. But in the lab, scientists have to get work done. So they kind of sidestep the whole is it alive question and instead focus on what they can measure. A virus's physical, tangible properties. Basically, its unique fingerprint. And one of the first things you'd notice is the sheer variety of shapes and sizes. You peek through an electron microscope, and it's a whole bizarre lineup. You've got these stiff little rods, long spaghetti-like flexible rods, perfect little spheres, and even more complicated ones wrapped in a fatty membrane called an envelope. Each one of these shapes is a huge clue to what kind of virus you're dealing with. And this isn't just about looks either. That shape has a huge impact on how tough a virus is. A simple, tightly packed rod like TMV is like a little brick. It's incredibly stable and can survive for a long time. But an enveloped virus, it's more like a soap bubble. That outer membrane is really delicate and easily damaged, making the virus much more fragile. Scientists also have some really clever chemical tricks up their sleeves. For instance, they can shoot UV light through a virus sample. And because the genetic stuff, the nucleic acid, absorbs light at one wavelength and the protein shell absorbs it at another, they can look at the ratio between the two. It's a super neat little lab hack that tells them how pure their virus sample is. Okay, so we've got the it's a live camp, the it's a chemical camp, and the nitty-gritty of how scientists actually ID these things. But so what? Why does any of this actually matter in the real world? Well, it matters because every single one of those properties, its shape, its proteins, its genetics, its chemical makeup, it gives us a tool, a weapon to use against it. We use microscopes to see its shape. We use tests like ELISA to hunt for its specific proteins. We use UV light to check our lab samples. And we use things like PCR to read its genetic code directly. Our whole diagnostic arsenal is built on this fundamental knowledge. And that is the bottom line here. By understanding the physical and chemical reality of a virus, we can identify it, we can track its spread, and we can start to develop real strategies to protect our crops. This isn't just some fun science puzzle. It is the absolute first line of defense for our global food supply. Which brings us all the way back to where we started. Is a plant virus alive? And by now, I think you can see the answer isn't yes, and it isn't no. The most honest answer is that it's both. And it's neither. The truth and the secret to its power is in that dual nature, part chemical, part evolving parasite. So I'll just leave you with this little thought to chew on. If something has a genetic code that lets it change, adapt, and evolve in response to its environment, does it really matter what label we stick on it? Maybe, just maybe, the ability to evolve is something even more fundamental than our simple definition of life itself.